A federal appeals court has blocked U.S. President Donald Trump from using an 18th century law to accelerate the deportation of individuals accused of belonging to a Venezuelan gang. The ruling, issued by a 3-judge panel of the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, stated that the 1798 Alien Enemies Act, originally designed for wartime scenarios, was never intended to target criminal gangs like Tren de Aragua. The court's majority opinion emphasized that sending migrants back to Venezuela does not constitute the kind of armed or organized force the law was designed to address. The 2-to-1 decision, which included judges appointed by both Republican and Democratic presidents, grants a preliminary injunction in favor of immigrant rights lawyers, blocking Trump's attempt to invoke the law. Trump appointee Andrew Oldham dissented, defending the administration's move.
Last night, the Supreme Court delivered a massive legal victory to the Trump administration and allowed us to continue removing foreign terrorist invaders under the Alien Enemies Act. This was a smackdown to a rogue left-wing, low-level district court judge who have relentlessly tried to stop President Trump from using his core constitutional powers as head of the executive branch and as commander-in-chief. The highest court in the land made it clear that the President of the United States has the power to protect our homeland and forcibly remove foreign terrorists who pose a grave threat to families and communities. Thank you to the Supreme Court for upholding the rule of law and protecting the Constitution. Our message to the monster Tren de Aragua and MS-13 terrorists still hiding illegally inside our country is clear. Deport yourself now, or you will be locked up and sent back to your home country.
Under a prior agreement, over 250 of the deported migrants had already been sent back to Venezuela. The Trump administration had argued that the individuals were tied to Tren de Aragua and posed a national threat, and they were sent to a notorious prison in El Salvador. However, the court concluded that these claims did not rise to the level of a national conflict as envisioned in the original act. The Alien Enemies Act, a rarely used federal law, grants the president wartime authority to deport non-U.S. citizens from enemy nations without a court hearing.
I can tell you this, these were bad people. That was a bad group of, as I say, hombres. That was a bad group. When you look at them and you look at the crimes that they've committed, you take a look. You don't get any tougher, you don't get worse than that. You understand that. So. But you'd have to ask the lawyers, yeah.
Sir, there's been some criticism that the Alien Enemies Act has only been invoked 3 other times. They were all during times of war. Do you feel that you're using it appropriately right now?
Well, this is a time of war because Biden allowed millions of people, many of them criminals, many of them at the highest level. They emptied jails out. Other nations emptied their jails into the United States. That's an invasion. And these are criminals, many, many criminals. Murderers, drug dealers at the highest level, drug lords, people from mental institutions. That's an invasion. They invaded our country. So this isn't, in that sense, this is war. In many respects, it's more dangerous than war because, you know, in war they have uniforms. You know who you're shooting at. You know who you're going after. These are people that came out, they're walking our streets. We have thousands of murderers. That Biden and his incompetence, first of all, he's grossly incompetent, but that Biden and his people and his probably auto pen, it looked like we had an auto pen for a president, and we would have been better off if we had probably. But it looks to me like, you know, that's a big subject. I'm sure you won't ask about that.
Historically, it has only been invoked during declared wars in the War of 1812 and the 2 World Wars. Meanwhile, Trump announced a U.S. military strike against a Venezuelan drug smuggling vessel, claiming the operation killed 11 narco-terrorists under the control of President Nicolas Maduro. He alleged that the vessel was carrying large quantities of drugs.
The drug vessel was carrying drugs?
Size?
I'll refer you to the Pentagon. They'll give you more details on that when in the next, I anticipate shortly, probably while we're in the air.
How many deaths with the lethal force?
Again, look, I'm trying to be evasive. I'll let the Pentagon answer that. Suffice it to say that the president is going to be on offense against drug cartels and drug trafficking in the United States. It destabilizes not just the country, but the entire Caribbean basin. These particular drugs were probably headed to Trinidad or some other country in the Caribbean, at which point they just contribute to the instability these countries are facing. So the president's been very clear that he's going to use the full power of America and the full might of the United States to take on and eradicate these drug cartels, no matter where they're operating from and no matter how long they've been able to act with impunity. Those days are over.
The vessels are still in the region. Do you plan those operations to continue? Do you expect those operations to continue?
I think as long as those vessels are in the region and as long as the president's in the White House, he's made very clear he's not going to allow the United States to continue to be flooded with cocaine and fentanyl and other drugs coming from different places. This one from Venezuela, which is a common route. That, by the way, some of it ends up in Europe. A lot of it ends up in Puerto Rico and then on into the United States mainland. So no one should be surprised. That's why they're there on a counter-drug mission, and they're going to continue to operate. As far as specifics and future operations, I have to refer you to the Pentagon on that. This is a DoD operation.
Mr.
All right?
You said that it was operated by a cartel. Can you share which cartel was operating the vessel?
Again, I'll let the operators discuss all of that, but I thought it was, the president was very clear, and that is we destroyed a drug boat that left Venezuela, operated by a designated narco-terrorist organization, which is what these are, and he's been clear that the days of acting with impunity and having an engine shot down or a couple drugs grabbed off a boat, those days are over. Now we are going to wage combat against drug cartels that are flooding American streets and killing Americans.
Will you take out the Maduro regime?
What is the legal authority for this strike?
The legal authority?
Yeah.
Well, look, again, I'm not going to answer for the White House counsel. Suffice it to say that all of those steps were taken in advance. The president has designated these as terrorist organizations, which is what they are. When you flood American streets with drugs, you are terrorizing America, and that's going to end.
Will you act on Venezuelan soil against the Maduro regime?
Well, this is a counter-drug operation. We're going to take on drug cartels wherever they are and wherever they're operating against the interests of the United States. The president's top obligation is to secure the national interest and the national security of our people. I know of no president that means that more than this one, our president now, President Trump. And so, but I'm not going to speculate about what might come down the road. Let's get in the air, guys.